Randy, we've got a problem.
What? They go.
Reality's here. He's trying to crash the party. Reality? Who let him in?
You're sad that people are mean? Well, I'm sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda. Like, I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
That was totally wicked!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you in particular back to this program right now. I know you have a choice in where you get your news from in the morning and which random obscure Tennessee-related vlog that you listen to. And we appreciate you for coming to this one. My interior decorator, David Shine Thompson, has helped me with the background this morning. As you'll see throughout this program, we have the ever-changing slide of the green strip, and then just some random man sitting on a gym bay back there.
Grant, there's a little man back there sitting on a gym bay.
That's so funny to me. It's a little man on a gym bay back there. So the real story back here is that I'm covering an outlet which I store, and Shine very aptly points out to me, oh, yes, that's true. But the man sitting in a gym bay is not going to draw people's eyes, right?
Not at all. No, I mean, yeah, like everybody was looking at the outlet, but no one would be looking at the little man on a gym bay. Not to mention the portal to Narnia behind you.
Yeah, that's right. That little man on a gym bay apparently is Voltaire. It says, it's better to risk saving a guilty person than to condemn an innocent one. I believe that we should all agree with that sentiment. Hey, by the way, my name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thompson's the other guy you see over sitting over there. This is Real News, as the hat indicates. realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. Might be doing some rambling here in a minute so we can get some other stuff posted. But realnewsradio.live is where you're going to find, I don't know, the Twitter links, the Facebook links, the YouTube links, all the good links of things that we do on this program. I'm getting the unified chat up going right now as we speak.
Hey, speaking of realnewsradio.live, we have a commenter on the Facebook stream that says, good morning. Anyone know where I can catch previous shows?
Oh,
realnewsradio.live. Go to the YouTube page and just look at the old shows. They're all numbered, actually.
Yeah.
You know, Real News, we're on Real News 102 or 5 or 6. Real News 106. Yeah. And
no,
there you go.
I was going to say, you know, we don't do a fantastic job. Shana, this is our off time, man. This is our downtime. This is what we do just because we love building this community. If you're brand new to the program, by the way, the motto of this program, of this community, it's not even a program. It's just an outworking of the community that we're building. The motto of this community is to build a scenario, a situation by which we can have calm, cordial dialogue with those that we disagree. So that when we do have disagreements, we're having disagreements amongst friends and neighbors, not amongst enemies. That is vitally important. If you're brand new, that's what we do here. If you want to check out previous shows, YouTube link, Twitch link, Facebook link, it's all there. It's cataloged for you. What I was going to say, though, is we don't do a fantastic job of breaking down little individualized clips. It's all slightly long format and then hour form. So I don't know, roll through. We'll get around to doing some of the clips later on at some point in our lives, but it is what it is. Hey, you're going to see, here we go, links to what's going on in the show notes every single day, wherever you're watching, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, doesn't matter, any of the platforms are on. In the show notes itself, in the description of that video, you're going to find a link to an Evernote link. That Evernote link will take you to the show notes that we're running through. So you can skip ahead, you can get some information yourself, you can follow back up later on, whatever you want to do. It's a service we provide to this community. It's not really true. It's just without that, we'd be totally lost, and we just so happen to give it to y'all as well. But you'll see the show notes already indicating here the nightmare scenario. And it is a little bit of a nightmare scenario entitled The Red Mirage. Now, The Red Mirage is a video I'm going to pull up here in just a minute and give you a quick TLDR because I don't like hiding the ball from y'all. The TLDR on The Red Mirage is a Bloomberg-backed / funded. It started as an outworking of his campaign. It's an organization now that just does data analysis. And their data and analysis indicates that the red Mirage is going to show that Trump is going to win overwhelmingly by way of popular vote and electoral college votes on the night of the election, only to indicate several days, several weeks, possibly several months later, their words, not mine, possibly several months later, that Joe Biden has actually won the election. Now, they don't call it a nightmare scenario. I'm calling it a nightmare scenario. They're calling it the red Mirage, which I think is an interesting.
They're calling it an election strategy.
Yeah, see, dude, exactly. And ultimately, when you get down to the end of the video, it's a little bit propaganda based, if not entirely. But nevertheless, if there's any sense of truth at all to any portion of that data outside of just the pure propaganda version of it to get out and vote Democrats type thing, because that's what they're all. The end of it is all just pushing Democrats to go early vote in person and not mail. That's the whole point of it. But if there's any truth at all to the nightmare scenario that Trump could win overwhelmingly on the day of the election, and then the longest precedent set we have right now in American history is 36 days it took to decide an election. That was obviously Bush v. Gore. Had to go to the Supreme Court and everything. If it goes longer than 36 days, or God forbid it actually even goes up to 35 days, I just don't think we can handle it right now. I'm not trying to be too dire or bombastic or pitch some fear-mongering. I promise you I'm not. I just don't think as a country we can handle that scenario right now, which is why I call it a nightmare scenario. We're going to be talking a little bit about NPR's dangerous apologetics and the dangerous apologetics that NPR is pitching. Apologetics, by the way, if y'all don't know, is just it's a fancy old term for a good argument, or not even a good argument, it's just a fancy old term for an argument. It's an argument that's trying to prove a point. That's all apologetics mean. It's not like you're apologizing for something. And it leads into this conversation of, well, you've heard a lot of people saying like, don't be too concerned about these businesses burning down or these property being destroyed because they all have insurance. Well, kinda, sorta. There's a story coming out of St. Paul, Minnesota now that's saying, yeah, they do have insurance, but this city is charging business owners. So there's some businesses whose, their business have burnt down entirely, or I guess to the point of where the insurance company is totaling. Can you total a business? Whatever the building equivalent version of a totaling like a car would be, you just can't rebuild on top of it. So you have to demolish the thing. The city is charging business owners in Minneapolis $140,000. Now, out of any context, that's probably a regular price to demolish a building. I don't know. Who knows? Would you know? Nobody would actually know that number unless you're in construction. The point of the story is that the insurance company is only going to pay somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 for that demolition. So the remaining portion of whatever that money is between $25,000 and $140,000 or $50,000 and $140,000, the business owner is on the dime to pay that. And the city is billing the business owners for something they had nothing to do with. So all of a sudden that argument of, well, don't worry because the insurance is going to cover it. Usually someone will retort with, yeah, but everyone's insurance premium is going to rise. So what are you talking about? Now the argument looks like it's not even about insurance premiums. Some of these people just don't have the money to pay for it because insurance isn't going to cover it. Anyways, I digress. Let's get into some of the local stories here. First topic at hand, as you're seeing in the show notes again. Reports say that Nashville is among the top cities where burnout is most likely. Reports say that Nashville is one of the top cities where burnout is most likely. Now, I bring this story up because it's an interesting segue that will fit into the next story, but just go with this for a second, all right? So this is coming from Fox 17, saying a report examining the number of hours worked, debt load, and commute times in the nation's top 100 cities ranks Nashville the 15th for where burnout is most likely. Personal finance and technology company Smart Asset used the U.S. Census Bureau 2018 American Community Survey for rankings, giving each data point an equally weighted score. They then tally the totals for the rankings. According to the report, Nashville ranked 15th with an overall score of 79.62, tying with Orlando, Florida. Really? Are we as burnt out as Orlando? I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know. Maybe. They got Disney World down there. Isn't that where Disney World is, Sean? Orlando?
It's in Kissimmee, which is somewhat close.
Yeah. Orlando-ish, right?
No, dude, you don't burn out in Florida. You are burned out. But it's a different kind. It's a different kind of burnout.
State, right?
Yeah, I think what they mean in this article is people in Nashville are going to work really hard and then get burned out. In Florida, you're just burned out. Like, you just start out burned out. And you never cool off.
Never cool off.
But people don't work like hard in Florida. They they glitz and glam and pull rabbits or mice out of hats, Seeings work hard, you know.
They say that based on the data, Nashvillians work an average of 38.9 hours per week.
Wow, working so hard.
I was gonna say, dude, that's an okay work week as far as I'm concerned, man. 38.9 hours,
man. See, this is just one of those like, who wrote this?
Right? I don't know, dude.
Like, what cheesy millennial is talking? 38 hours a week. It's burnout time.
Yeah,
that's me. It's probably this writer that gets paid like $70,000 a year to write little squibs.
Yeah,
I'm working so hard.
I don't know, man. Maybe as society progresses, we should be looking towards working less and less hours. But
why?
I don't know, dude.
Why?
That's from saying. Why? I don't know. I don't even know if that's what we should be doing.
We should maybe like figuring out how to do the same, but be more productive constantly.
Man. Right?
Always more productive, not work less. Humans are the driver of value on this planet. Get it. Learn it. If we don't do stuff, nobody's doing stuff. Because everything else is an animal or an inanimate object. Humans, we're the ones.
I'm telling you, man, 38 hours a week. That's suffice to say, Shannon and I are working a little bit more than that, and I'm sure y'all are as well too. Almost every person I've spoken to so far has told me the same thing when I've asked. I feel like I'm working more now, at least even during some of the shutdown period, than I was ever before, and everyone's saying, yeah, that's exactly where I'm at as well. All right. So the story goes on to say 38.9 hours per week, the fifth highest total, apparently. It's the fifth highest total. 38 hours a week. So I'll call it 39 hours a week. The work week's supposed to normally
we are so lame, bro. This country, like, we deserve the robot overlords that come to take over us, man. 38 hours a week, burnout. I mean, we're the fifth highest, bro. People are working so hard here in Nashville.
It's the normal work. It's not even top of a normal work week at this point, as far as I'm concerned. But whatever.
I do 38 hours before lunch.
That's right. I just never sleep, and I've done 38 hours before lunch. Anyways, they say residents also worked an average of 39.6 hours per week and are dedicated 22.7% of their total income towards housing. Now, Aurora, Colorado, that's actually oddly interesting. Very interesting. Aurora, Colorado topped the cities where burnout is most likely, followed by San Francisco, Jersey City, Miami, Washington, Denver, Arlington, Dallas, Seattle, and Austin. Charlotte tied, rounding out the top 10.
Maybe that's just the places more likely to like complain about having to work. Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously. Where are the loggers complaining about burnout? All it is a bunch of writers, marketers, and things like that. They're the people who complain about burnout. I mean, everybody I know in construction always works more than 40 hours a week, and they're happy to do it because they get paid more. Yeah.
They're happy to do it because they get paid more. They feel like there's some sense of fulfillment out of it. And, this goes into the next story here in a very unfortunate way. And it goes into a story that we've been hearing. Tim Pool. I don't know what y'all think about Tim Pool. Doesn't matter. He does a decent job at curating news, and he does a decent job of curating a specific kind of news, as far as I'm concerned. The guy used to be a journalist before. He's better than a lot of pundits out there, I suppose, right? He does a decent job of curating, and he's been focusing quite a bit recently on stories about New Yorkers moving down to the South. And we actually covered a story on this program about New Yorkers. They take these aggregate search data from all sort of like apartment finder websites, apartmentlist.com and apartmentfinder.com, and they aggregate this data together and indicate that something like 72% of searches from people in New York looking to move elsewhere, 72% of the searches were searched into Nashville. So it's like this mass exodus of New Yorkers coming into Nashville now, right? And that fits with the story now. I would predict about this onslaught or this oncoming tidal wave of evictions. And I just don't know what this future landscape is going to look like. It's going to be a very strange one, a very rocky one, and some seemingly tumultuous times that we're about to enter. I mean, you've heard some spiritual leaders in the recent months call this sort of an olive pressing moment, right? It's squeezing moment that's about to come. And I think this is kind of something that they're talking about, sort of all these unintended consequences, and maybe not unintended is a word, but certainly possibly unforeseen consequences of a bunch of the COVID shutdown. Suicidality is off the charts now at this point. Divorce rate has skyrocketed. World hunger is back to 1980 levels, right? I mean, there's I don't know what a solid generation of children is going to look like with this shakeup at the education system that we've just done. And evictions is about to be another one that we're just going to be toppled on top of right now. So the economy is a thing that's focused on, sure, but there's all these little weird offshoots, psychological and otherwise, that even if we're focusing on, we just don't know the true ramifications of what's about to come. And I don't mean to be too dire to start this morning off. I promise you I'm not. I'm just trying to give a little bit of a predictor out there just to get it cemented in some of y'all's minds. Like, look, we think it's bad now. I think it may get a little bit worse before it gets better, but that's okay. It's okay. We have gotten through much worse in this country before. As a species, we've been through much worse, much far worse than this before. Right? We are designed to handle much more than this, and we can come out of this stronger than we have before. Just keep those type of notions in the back of your mind while we're going through this, and remember to love on your fellow human being, love on your brother and sister, love on those close to you throughout all of this stuff. And I promise you, we'll be stronger out of this. Here's the story, though. Attorney warns of tidal wave of evictions. Now, Nashville housing attorneys are preparing for an onslaught of eviction proceedings as the Davidson County General Sessions Court on Monday began processing cases after several months of COVID-19 moratoriums and delays. So that's what I'm talking about. That's what's about to come here. It's not just that they're arbitrarily picking up eviction notices again. It's that there were moratoriums and delays set on these things. This is what, Carrie Dietz, she's an attorney with Legal Aid Society, Middle Tennessee, and the Cumberland said, quote, "We're really expecting a tidal wave of evictions. The patchwork of tenant protections at the local, state, and federal levels has gradually fallen away as courts have reopened and moratoriums expired. Tenants are losing protections as a boost to federal unemployment payments instituted towards the beginning of COVID crisis has since been slashed." Now, this attorney went on to say she can count the number of full-time tenant attorneys in Nashville on one hand, which is wildly problematic. What she's basically saying is we're about to have an onslaught of situations here that there's only a couple of us to handle. And this is not a type of thing that you could just willy-nilly pro se represent yourself. You couldn't just walk into a courtroom and try and figure out this style of real estate
It's like
law.
contract law. It's really, really, it's not like criminal defense, which is also very complicated, but a lot of people do try to defend themselves. This is stuff where you really need a lawyer.
Right?
Because you don't know.
You don't know, man. You don't know. I mean, even the people that practice this as law, I mean, it takes their entire
they got to pay like
to
4 interns, to go look up stuff just for your case. Go to your county, your city, look at the deed, look at all this stuff.
I mean,
see what the rules are.
I can guarantee at least 1 or 2, possibly 3, a couple people watching this program have heard of a situation or maybe even had a situation where you've purchased a piece of real estate only to find out later on that there's some lien placed on that real estate. And you would think to yourself, how in the world does that how does that happen in the process of checks on checks on checks on checks? I mean, if you purchase something before, how many papers are you signing? Stack that thick of papers that you're signing. How in that process somewhere did someone not figure out that the person that previously owned the property itself has been liened or mortgaged out to somebody else? How is that not happening? But it goes to prove the point that it's complex stuff sometimes, man. You got to dig through the paperwork. Anyways, the point of this story is to bring up again that there is something is coming in the future here. Something is coming by way of a major change. Something is coming by way of something that I don't know. I'm not trying to be too dire. I promise you, I'm not trying to pitch this idea. There's about a bunch of tragedies about to come. I'm just saying, just be on the lookout for some of this. I'm putting out a bolo, okay? A compassion bolo is all I'm putting out here. Be on the lookout for areas and people that you can spread love on and spreading compassion on, and ways that you can help. Because some of these types of stories, you're not going to see. Look at this Nashville Post. I don't even know what Nashville Post is. This isn't going to make national headlines. Unless you're trying to get some political capital out of it. And if you are trying to gain political capital out of a story like this, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So just look out, see where you can help these people. I don't know, man. I don't know. That's the only thing I'm saying. Let me hit some of these comments real quick, and then we'll go back into the stories at hand. I see Jonathan said on Facebook, the way it works is if it's livable and you can't pay, you're out. If it's not livable, then the landlord is required by law to make it livable. Interesting. See, Jonathan said actually rent law in Tennessee is simple. I guess the rent law itself is simple, but it adds a sense of complexity on top of it because these moratoriums were essentially pushing those payments off to the property owners, right? Now, obviously, Jonathan understands this, but it's every step that you push this can down the road, somebody else is going to have to pick up the brunt of it. They're going to have to pick up the burden of that. So if it's not the renter paying more or paying at all, then the property owner, if they don't outright own the property, then they're probably using your rent payment to pay the mortgage on top of that. And they're just building equity out of it, right? That's what they're doing. They may not be making a massive amount of income. It's an investment property for them. But if you stop paying, then they have to pay that mortgage. And if they're doing that with 15 properties across Nashville, let's say that's their main business, that's a major expense that now they are taking on. And if they're trying to push that off into someone else, well, let's say that the bank can't take it on. If the bank can't take it on, then the whole system crumbles, and we're back to a 2007, 2008 housing crisis again, right? I don't know. That's a very dire prediction. I don't pretend to understand the economics behind it, but it is what it is. Jonathan said there's vaccines and final trials at the CDC. Hey, another interesting story about that too. Our very own, oh my goodness, dude. Why did I forget this guy's name? Shine, help me out here. General, I think he was a general. He's a colonel, rather, in the Army. He's a heart surgeon. Senator Briggs. Senator Briggs. I think someone fact check me in this, but I'm pretty sure our own state Senator Briggs here has actually been one of the test trial people for one of these test vaccines, one of these trial vaccines. I think he injected himself or had himself injected with the trial vaccine a couple weeks back or something like that. Right?
Man, I just pictured Senator Briggs injecting himself and becoming the Hulk. What is happening? And I guess it's only funny if you know Senator Briggs, because he's a really serious guy. I can just picture him with a ripped shirt, green, sitting on a committee hearing. Anyway.
Hey, realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. Let's move into the next story at hand here as we touch some national stories. Hey, Sean, as I'm pulling this up, it's the first thing under the national stories section of the show notes. It says Facebook getting ready for Congress's next move. There's that link to a Google photo. Go ahead and bring up that Google photo if you could, and just leave it in the background while I'm talking, and hopefully it's not blurry on people's screens. But most of you, I saw this posted yesterday by one of our Real News Elite now, Jessica. Yes, and she is a Real News Elite. She's out in Pennsylvania way. She usually watches with us every single morning. She posted on her page. That's at least the first time that I came across this photo that you're probably looking at right now. And I'm just going to let y'all read it for a second as it's going through. And I asked Jessica, did you find this somewhere? Was this on your page? What is this? And then as soon as I started talking to her about this, I saw the same update on mine. So the screenshot that you're looking at is literally from my Facebook screen. And this just set the internet on fire yesterday. And I don't know if it's exactly warranted, at least to the level of attention that it received, but it's certainly worthy of conversation right now. Absolutely. Now, I'll explain all that in a second. Here's what you're reading, okay? This is the update to Facebook's terms. Effective October 1st, 2020, Section 3.2, which is a fascinating section to read if you've never read it before. It's basically the terms of what you can and cannot do on Facebook. Go read it sometimes. It's riveting. It actually is a little bit interesting. Anyways, Section 3.2 of our terms and services will be updated to include the following, quote, we, meaning Facebook, also can remove or restrict access to your content, services, or information if we determine that doing so is reasonably necessary to avoid or mitigate adverse legal or regulatory impacts to Facebook. Maybe we should call it Facebook. Do Facebook.
Facebook?
Facebook. They can remove information if they determine that doing so is reasonably necessary to avoid or mitigate adverse legal or regulatory impacts. Let me say first up, outright here, I have remained very consistent on all of this stuff, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or otherwise. There's a very nuanced conversation that must take place at high level or something like this of whether Facebook is a platform or a publisher. I don't think we have time to delve all the way back into that right now. Let me just break this down real quick, because where I'm about to go is by making the statement, I don't care what Facebook does with their product. Frankly, I don't care if they make a terrible product and run it to the ground. I kind of would prefer them to do that because I just don't like Facebook. You hear me, Zuck? Shut me down, Zuck. Do what you got to do. I just don't like it. I don't like platform. I don't like having to use it. I don't like the censorship involved. I don't like the way that they run the company. I don't like it as a product. If it were a commodity in any other marketplace, we probably wouldn't choose it so actively. It's just there's a real lack of competition going on right now. Nevertheless, where the currently sits with Facebook and YouTube and all these things, they're considered platforms. So if Shine or I or anybody else goes out and posts something that's defamatory, if I make a claim about David Shine Thompson that is categorically untrue, there's no way, and I know it to be untrue. And
Grant, you're a liar. I never said that. You liar.
Let's say I said something or I posted something and I knew that Shine didn't say it. And I did it with the intention of harming his reputation. And let's say it did harm his reputation. I don't know. Let's say he lost his job out of it or something. Now, Shine could sue me for defamation, but he couldn't sue Facebook for defamation because it's not Facebook's fault that I posted that. That is what's called being a platform. Now, as a platform, you are meant to be a neutral arbiter of information, meaning you can't really pick and choose based upon a political bias. You can't say that that's okay and that's not okay. Some things you can, clearly, right? Obvious things, nudity, violence, things that fit into the traditional definitions of what's okay and what's not okay. But not an arbitrary, that's not I used that word improperly. You can't choose with a clear political bias as to Republican is bad, Democrat's okay. If you start doing that, you start to look like a publisher. Using the same example that I just used, okay? Now, if I write a letter to the editor, to the New York Times, making the same defamatory claim about David Shine Thompson that I posted on my Facebook page, and the New York Times decides to print it as an op-ed, say it was entire, 1,700 word essay, blah, blah, blah. And the New York Times decides to print it on their op-ed. David Shine Thompson, if he is harmed, if there was malicious intent involved, he can sue the New York Times for defamation. Because the New York Times is a publisher. Like Nick
Sandman just sued the Washington Post and CNN and won over the Indian drum beating staring contest.
Right? So the New York Times, because they're a publisher, they can be held liable. But the trade-off there is that they get to choose what they print and what they don't print. Facebook is not supposed to be able to choose, at least in such strict manners, what they publish and what they don't publish, because they're not publishers. They are a platform. So you've seen people use this word platform a lot out there, and I just don't know if they're using it in the legal context. So back to the story at hand. We see this update yesterday. Again, one more time, Facebook saying, hey, we can remove your stuff. We can also remove or restrict access to your content, services, or information if we determine that doing so is reasonably necessary to avoid or mitigate adverse legal or regulatory impacts on Facebook. Now, all that scenario that I just described, the whole platform publishing, that distinction, that's immediately where my mind went. I went right there because I thought, okay, this is Facebook trying to get out in front of this. They just drug Zuckerberg and Cook and who's the guy from Google? I always forget him. They drug
Sanjay Gupta. No, that's the guy from CNN, Sanjay Gupta.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Sundar Pichai?
I think so.
Sundar Pichai?
Yeah.
It's hard to remember names that aren't English. I'm not, especially when I don't like them, but I'm pretty sure it's Pichai. But I want to play. My first thought was we've been wanting to ban these leftist BLM people who are advocating violence and burning down buildings and organizing on Facebook to do so, but we want some cover. I think they really want the legal people to go after them so they can get away with banning people that they've wanted to ban for a long time that are on the left. I think that's where my head went. Was, hey, we're not going to let you organize the overthrow of the country during the election season after October. That's not what we're, during the month of October. You're not going to October surprise on Facebook. You're not going to use Facebook to October surprise. That's kind of what I heard. Or when I was reading this last night, because Kel was saying she got the notification on Facebook. So did I. And I started reading it. I'm like, oh, okay. That's what I thought immediately was elections coming up. It's October. They don't want to be the center of an October surprise story. And I also think they want to ban some people in Portland and Seattle and places like that.
I hear you.
But I think it's what you're saying is probably true too. But I was just giving you my first reaction. But that's kind of my bias of where I feel like the meta culture is going, because like Joe Biden's down in the polls because of the riots and people advocating for him. I mean, where that's like the story now. Everyone's so shocked that Donald Trump is winning or whatever. Everyone's so shocked about it. I feel like the meta culture, if that makes any sense, like the people who make decisions that drive a lot of the space, I think they're going in the way of being against the rioters, being against the revolutionaries, because it's bad for business, it's bad for politics. They can't use them as an effective tool anymore to get done political things, even though it was always a bad idea to try to use these people and work with them in the first place. It's ruined their party. It's ruined many cities. But that was my first reaction. I wanted to play too. In the chat room, when you got this, what was your first reaction? Let us know in the chat.
Yeah, actually, to that point of the question that Sean just asked, what was your first reaction? Kelly said in Facebook, there's a lawsuit against, like how she calls it face hole. There's a law against face hole and pedophiles for sex crimes. She then links to an article. Headline is U.S. Court approves sex trafficking lawsuit against Facebook. She finishes by saying, apparently pedophiles aren't against facehole community standards, yet here we are. Jonathan said in Facebook, the problem with this move is that it makes them a publisher. It's exactly right. Yeah. It makes them a publisher, therefore under FCC rule. He goes on to say, by law, they can't have social media accounts. They can't own computers either. Let them be shocked, Jonathan says. Now, the story of why this was apparently done, or at least as far as CNET and some other random local affiliate out of, where is this, Dallas, oddly enough. The story that they're pitching is that this all has to do with Australia. Now, take what you will, because I'm pretty sure CNET is like the tech version of CNN. I may be totally wrong about that, but it doesn't matter. There's a little bit of politics that plays into that from time to time. At least I follow a lot of tech-related news, so CNET's not my go-to choice, but it is a go-to. It is a choice for tech-related news. They're presenting this, that it's all about Australia. Here's what they say. It's possible the move is linked to Facebook's threat to block Australian publishers and individuals from sharing news stories on its platform. Facebook made the move in reaction to an Australian measure that would require it, meaning Facebook, would require Facebook to compensate media organizations for its use of their stories. That's super interesting. The social network said that the policy would...
stupid.
Right?
Well, that means we can't share stories anymore.
I know, dude.
That means we can't share. That means, man, that is terrible, dude. That means like we may not. What if YouTube follows suit? We can't watch clips from, I don't know, not that I do this very often, but like Tucker Carlson or Lou Dobbs or whoever. I mean, whoever you want. Bill Maher, right? You know, like, what does this mean? You know, Drudge warned us back in 2016. He said copyright law was about to get stupid. He was going to be changing his business model with his aggregation site. He warned us. He went on Alex Jones and he warned us. He said, get out of these ghettos. Make your own website. Get off Facebook, YouTube, all those things. If you're making your money off it anyway.
Jonathan just said in Facebook, he doesn't follow CNET either. But Sean, I'm telling you, buddy, you're right on. Like, I don't know what this means. If you have to compensate Facebook or if every single time, and I'm not following it a lot, but I think the concept would be if every single time that, say Real News, for example, if every single time we share an article from CNN or Fox News or whatever, Facebook has to issue some compensation to CNN and Fox News on our behalf. I think that's what I'm hearing is what's coming out of Australia. And I may be
They'll
totally
go broke
wrong.
In a day.
That's Facebook's claim, is that it would be an insurmountable amount of money. I mean, you can never calculate something that high, I suppose. The social network, here's the story, said the policy would force it to pay arbitrary and theoretically unlimited sums for information that makes up only a small fraction of its services. So I suppose Facebook's claim is you're basically telling us to pay an unlimited amount of potential money for something that only makes up a small portion of what we actually do. Like the sharing of, a lot of people get their news from Facebook. I think most people get their news from Facebook if recent surveys are correct, but that's not to say that most of what Facebook does is the sharing of articles. You follow that logic? I think that's what Facebook is saying. It's a small percentage of what we do is people sharing news articles. Now, most people get their news from there. That's fine. But if you're saying every single time that's done, we have to pay something, I don't know how to follow up with that. I don't. Now, here's my whole problem.
Like, what about music, too? Like, you can't post a song from a band you like or whatever because Facebook's got to pay the publisher of the music?
Right.
Like, they got to pay Warner Brothers or Sony or RCA or something like that. That would destroy what is social networking.
And honestly, man, I don't know, man. The conspiracy theorist in me says that that's the point. like the Alex Jones, the inner Alex Jones that's inside of all of us. If the little baby Alex Jones that's in there,
like the little man on the gym bay, there's a little Alex Jones in all of us. Yeah,
they're turning the frogs gay. Right? The little guy inside of all of us that's doing all of this. He says to me, "That's the plan all along. Is that Australia?" And there's no substance to what I'm about to say, so just be clear about this. But the real cynic says that the play here is to destroy Facebook. The country of Australia wants to destroy Facebook by making this play, because that's what it would do. I mean, think about the never-ending amount of litigation, because Facebook is not just going to pay this willingly. They're not just going to catalog and track this stuff on their own. If something like that were to go through, Facebook wouldn't just say, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that." Not only will I pay theoretically unlimited sums of money, I'll make sure to go ahead and do that for you. I'll catalog and track how often that's happening. I'll just set up a bank account. No, the individual companies whose information is being shared would probably, I assume, have to go after Facebook in some type of suit or some type of arrangement to get that money from them, which would mean it's not just a theoretically unlimited sum of money. It's a theoretically unlimited piece of litigation, just on and on and on with company after company after company.
Wouldn't it be more likely they just stop doing business in Australia?
Exactly. I think they just stop doing business.
They just close all Facebook offices in Australia and say, you can use the product, but like, we don't care if you use the product, and we're not updating our services to fit Australian law.
Right.
And if you share something on Facebook in Australia, then you're responsible for it.
Yep.
Not us, because we're not going to be in court. We're not going to Sydney. We don't care. G'day.
G'day, Australia. Kelly says, "I know, right? We've created a monster." Jonathan said, "Kelly, it's like trying to live without a cell phone." I mean, because Kelly said, "I'm jumping off of Facehall, but it's difficult now because of the local groups I'm in. Homeschool groups here on Facebook are important to my family. Not every group is going to be on whatever new platform I choose." That's a great point that Kelly's talking about too. And I think that's what Facebook is recognizing, is the amount of leverage that they have in some of these groups that are vitally important. I mean, shoot, Shine, look at the group that we have. Let's be honest about this, bro. As much as we don't like Facebook because of the way that they tend to tailor their product to do so. And let me end this whole thing real quick, and then I'll get back to Kelly's point. They can tailor their product to whatever they want to, as far as I'm concerned. They don't want to do business in Australia. They don't have to. I don't care, man. I don't care. They can turn it into an awful product if they want to. I believe that's their right to do as a privately held company or private corporation, or at least not operating as a government entity. But Kelly is correct. Even at Real News here, the overwhelming majority of our views, of our content, of our likes, of our shares, of how you all interact with us, 80 to 90% of that comes from Facebook. We have it's such a statistically small number on Twitch, it's not even worth mentioning. And we have a little bit of traction on YouTube, right? But outside of that, it's not really anywhere else aside from Facebook. So we're kind of stuck in this situation, right? So it's kind of the darned if you do, darned if you don't type thing. But I will say, I don't know, if we're giving the power to Facebook, we can just easily take it away. I'll wrap this story up here, and then we'll move into the nightmare scenario. Just all this to say, just be forewarned. Something's coming down Facebook. All right, they're signaling it out there. Change is going to be October 1st. I seriously doubt you're going to see any substantial or even noticeable difference to the way you interact with Facebook. Right, you're probably already getting censored now. If you're getting censored now, you're going to be continually getting censored in the future. We've been censored before for posting a meme with the G word. Pew pew. That G word, that was a laser. But you get what I'm saying? That was kind of a laser. When pew pew. Yeah. Posting that G word with a meme of that G word on there got us shut down. And then Facebook very clearly told us it's because the word itself, I mean, it was in their language, said the word itself was indicative of causing psychological harm or psychological violence to somebody, which is just absolutely asinine. But whatever, it is what it is. If you're shut down now, you're probably going to be shut down in the future going forward here in the nightmare scenario. If Facebook didn't present it with enough of a nightmare scenario, maybe they're trying to get ready for the red Mirage. And as I'm talking about this a little bit, Shine, go ahead and pull up that YouTube clip and just tell me as soon as it's ready, because we'll just go straight into the first minute or two here. But like I said, what you're about to watch is it's a company set up by Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg, he's a rich dude. He's got some money. So he's got money to spend on politics. And he set up this little data analysis company, Wolf something. I don't know what they're called. They'll tell you their name here in just a second. It doesn't matter. But it was initially set up as part of his campaign. And then it just sort of continually existed as part of the DNC. And now it's sort of continually existing as sort of a strategy data analysis company for the Biden campaign. I don't know. It's this weird quasi thing. But they put some of this data together, and go ahead and play that from the beginning, buddy. This is what their polling is showing.
Hi. Welcome.
Thanks. You were going to shake my hand.
Oh, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
Thanks
Welcome to
for having
Hawkfish.
me.
It sounds like Baba O'Reilly. By The Who.
A mirage, by definition, is something that appears to be there, but that doesn't really exist. And you have a model scenario called the red mirage. What does that mean?
The reason we talk about a red mirage is, in fact, because we believe that on election night, we are going to see Donald Trump in a stronger position than the reality actually is. We are sounding an alarm and saying that this is a very real possibility, that the data is going to show on election night an incredible victory for Donald Trump. That is likely to be what we see when every legitimate vote is tallied and we get to that final day, which will be someday after election day. It will, in fact, show that what happened on election night was exactly that, a mirage. It looked like Donald Trump was in the lead.
I love the assurity he's talking about right now.
Not
Right.
win every ballot.
So solid, not theoretical.
You have a result on election night where it appears that Donald Trump has won, but a result after ballots are counted that show that Joe Biden has actually won.
Let's say it again for the slow people.
Let's get
Thank
an
you.
obvious question out of the way first. Hawkfish is a company that's started by
Hawkfish.
Michael Bloomberg, that does work for the DNC, that's doing work for pro-Biden super PACs.
Man,
If I'm a Republican
at least they
voter,
said all that.
an independent voter, a skeptical Democrat, why should I listen to you?
One of the things that we believe is that facts matter. It's not about disinformation or misinformation or using fear as a tactic.
Or
There are
predictive
objective
programming
truths
like you're doing right
in
now.
this
Yeah.
world today.
And how do you build your modeling? How are you basing your projections?
We essentially built a simulator
Science.
where it's a sequence of sliders, and you just pull those sliders to start seeing what the scenarios will show you. What's it going to look like on election night? What's it going to look like the day after, and the day after that, and the day after that? In most every year, Democrats are more likely to vote by mail.
We have a graph.
And that has only increased.
Which
this
means
cycle.
it's totally
We see in the data
science.
that twice as many voters intend to cast a ballot by mail than have ever before. They are disproportionately Joe Biden supporters. Because there are absolutely some ballots that were mailed in that get counted sooner because folks were proactive and got it in as soon as they possibly
There's
could.
no
or
way
dropped it off
21% of the
or showed
vote
up to,
was mail-in
a
in
polling
2016.
station,
That
where
is
randomly
bull
votes
crap.
allowed. But it's going to take a while. It might be weeks. Because absentee ballots inevitably are harder and slower to count. We are going to find ourselves that when you have those prototypical cable news talking head moments of saying, well, you know, here's what we're seeing and this is what it looks like, it's going to show Donald Trump in the lead in a lot of key places on election night when in-person reporting has occurred.
What about California or New York?
California,
a huge
California
blue
is
state?
blue. New York
Okay.
is blue, right? Some of the but Virginia is a really good example of a
Okay.
state that should be blue that turns out red in this
On
moment.
election night.
On election night.
Okay.
So a state like Pennsylvania, Florida, it's in play by just a couple points, and that's what tips it in one direction or another. If you were to essentially average battleground state polling, Joe Biden appears to be ahead by about 8%. And so if you have a number of ballot
He's tied in
challenges
every battleground
in a
state are
like
winning.
that, as big as it is, as large as the population is, as diverse as the population is, it can make a really big difference over those next 10 days. And so when you start accounting for that in your modeling, you see that 8% lead kind of whittle down a little bit more, a little bit more. We might have the results saying something on the evening of November 3rd that it will not say the evening of November 10th.
What difference does it make?
All right, right there,
if,
you can cut it, Sean.
The results seem to
That's-
show something.
I like how she was going into Hillary Clinton. What difference at this point does it make?
Well, and that's honestly, her question that she was posing is where I was about to go. But I really want, I know there's a long clip, but I wanted to get to the end so you can actually see what some of their data was showing with the specific numbers of calculating electoral college difference. And I'm not being rhetorical when I ask this of the Real News audience. Let me know not just how you feel But if my opinion on this is a little bit too bombastic, if it's just a little bit too out there, I honestly don't know if America can handle this scenario right now. And look, I don't think I'm just playing out a hypothetical. I'm just having fun. It's a little talk program we do. We're just playing out, you know, it is what it is. It's hypothetical stuff. Let's have fun with it, okay? I don't know if any of this is necessarily as true or as realistic as this person is pitching. If you play out the remainder two minutes of this video, what it really starts to sound like is more and more and more, and then eventually they drop the full whole thing, that it sounds like it's straight up propaganda to force Democrats to show up to early voting. Because what they know is going to happen, Democrats, that is, the DNC, they know inevitably human beings, we love to procrastinate at every level of life, everywhere. In fact, a lot of people that have success in life are just people that don't procrastinate. It's not like they're brilliant. They just have great work ethic. Discipline itself is something that a lot of people have to go to the military or be Bruce Lee to figure out how to use properly. You know what I'm saying? It's not rocket science, though. It's not like genius level IQ stuff. Just don't wait till the last minute. But look at what our Congress does every day, man. They pass 3,000-page bills and nobody has a chance to read it because they do it in the last 12-hour period. This is what we do as humans. And Democrats know that a sizable portion of people that want to rely on the mail-in voting process, one, because it might be safer, sure, but a lot of people are going to do it because it's just seemingly easier. They don't want to leave their house. They don't want to stand in line for 3 hours. They don't want to, especially in major cities, man, they don't want to find public transportation right now with all this other stuff going on. And plus, it's the narrative they've been pitched and told to believe, right? So it's the easier thing to do. Not only is it the easier thing to do, they're going to wait till the last minute to do it. So a lot of these people won't even ask for their mail-in ballot until a day before they're supposed to turn the thing in, and they will never receive one. Or if they do receive one, it's going to show up 3 weeks after the election is done.
Or they're going to get it, fill it out, and not know what to do with it.
Exactly.
Or fill it out and not take it. They're like, oh, I'll take it to the post office. I'll take it to the post and then forget.
Yeah. And if they fill it out, they're probably not going to fill it out properly because they've never done it before. You know, where voting in person is it's a pretty easy thing to do. There's not a lot of different weird choices you can make, but I don't know what the mail-in ballot process looks like. And neither do a lot of people. Most people are going to be, not most, a sizable portion of people that are voting in mail are going to be voting in mail for the very first time ever. And this is going to cause major complications. And a lot of those people that are doing the mail-in process are going to be legitimately excluded from this vote. And I do mean legitimately excluded by way of the laws on the books. They are going to be legally excluded because of all the stuff I just talked about. They didn't sign the thing properly. They didn't add some type of identification. They didn't check some box. They didn't mail it in at the proper time. I don't know what the thing is. But no games are going to be played at some election commission or some election office somewhere if a sizable portion of these mail-in votes are just written off, because the simple fact of the matter is that people just haven't done it, at least not to this extent. Our postal service is not equipped for this right now. They just aren't. And if you really want to buy into the narrative of the conspiracy theory that Democrats have been pushing, that Trump is trying to destroy the Postal Service right now, then they certainly aren't equipped for this. So what that video was really explaining was propaganda to tell Democrats, like, dude, we're screwed if we try and rely on vote-in mailing. We just are. Like, Trump is he's going to win, dude. He's going to win. I mean, I know more of us vote. I know more Democrats vote by mail than before. But we're just absolutely done for. And Sean, if we lose Facebook, let me know. I'll keep rambling. But look, the reason why I think this is a nightmare scenario, Sean, is I just don't think the country can handle something like this right now, man. I just don't think we can handle something like this right now. I think if we go through another Bush v. Gore scenario of letting this thing play out, if we go through another Bush v. Gore scenario where we're 36 days after the election, and let's say their modeling was correct. I think their modeling had Trump winning by, 400, 300 plus something electoral college votes? I mean, if he wins by that heavy of a margin to start with, if that's what he wins to start with, and then we have to wait a solid month and a week afterwards, and we have to wait a solid month and a week afterwards to catch up to this thing, then look, and Daniel just said in Facebook here a very valid point. He said, sure, if all Democrats vote by mail, the election night only shows that people vote in person, so they're not wrong. He's talking about the data modeling may not be wrong. In the past, the vote was military vote for Republicans. The past that was military vote. Oh, in the past that was military vote for Republicans.
He was talking about the numbers of Republicans that voted by mail, but like their numbers were crap, dude. Like I pay attention to that stuff. It's never been more than like 1.7% of the vote ever, never, ever. Like absentee ballots have never factored into an election ever. Not one time. Not one time has any state ever waited to count all their absentee ballots before calling it because they can do math. They know how many absentee ballots are out. They know how the current total, and they know it won't change the current total. I mean, even in Bush v. Gore, they were not counting absentee ballots. They were counting the actual ballots.
There was the hanging Chad.
Yeah, well, because because the amount of absentees was negligible.
Right.
It wasn't worth recounting them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't going to swing it, where the votes that weren't tallied correctly in Miami-Dade County would have swayed the election, because it was a 60,000 vote swing or something like that.
Well, again, this is where I don't know if we got cut from Facebook, if we're lagged or whatever it was, but where I'm leading
still live. We're still live. The internet's, I don't know if this is what happens. I'll just give people a little inside baseball when we're talking about stuff, and I don't know what you want to call it, the system, the culture, whatever, that we're not supposed to, or whatever. You get what I'm saying. When we're talking about edgy topics, which weirdly enough, voting these days, edgy topic. Weird, right? But it literally takes the internet signal at my house and drags it down to 0 for about a second. It's usually long enough to kick us off Facebook. And I pay for the most expensive internet from Comcast. I can't pay them any more money per month than I do. And it's mostly for the show. So I know it's not Comcast. I got an internet superhighway running into this house. And I've called them about it, and they're like, we're not doing it. So I don't know how it's done, but we should be back now. And something you got to throw in here on analysis, since we're not lagging anymore, is you were saying it's pushing people. I think the most innocent way was thinking it would be bombastic. I think the most innocent way to look at this is they're trying to push people to do early voting.
Well, that's what he says in the end of the video.
Okay. Well, he's full of crap. I mean, the Never Trumpers and Democrats got together and did a war games. We talked about it on the show like 3 weeks ago. And in that scenario, when they thought Joe Biden would concede because Donald Trump won on election night, who was it? It was John Podesta. John Podesta, playing Joe Biden in that war game scenario of what happens, said he was instructed by the DNC to not concede for any reason. And I think this is predictive programming to drag out the elections so that there can be shenanigans. Not so we can get the vote total right.
Man,
but so that there can be and will be shenanigans. And this is predictive programming for that. I mean, like in New Jersey, Virginia, Nevada, California, New York, they're sending out ballots to everyone. How many people in that state actually vote? Like 10% at best? At best? Maybe 20? So that means 80% of the ballots are just out there that no one's going to use. And we're talking like truckloads, truck after truck after truck after truck, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of ballots, right? And if they have 3 months, they can get some, $15 an hour, $14 an hour communist, nonprofit people, the tourists who go and do these protests in other cities, they can pay them to fill out these ballots by the millions.
Man, I'm telling you, dude, just the simple idea.
Now, there's a bombastic opinion.
I know, man. And I can, that's why I said before, if there's any sense of truth at all. Now, Daniel did say in Facebook, but if y'all don't know Daniel, by the way, I don't want to air out all his stuff, but the guy knows what he's talking about with tech. Like Jonathan knows what he's talking about with tech too. Jonathan knows what he's talking about with local politics as well. Daniel works on like supercomputer type stuff. So he gets the data analysis. He gets the tech side as well. Right. I mean, he said a second ago that it's likely that this model that they're using isn't super complex stuff. It's not NASA level complexity. So there might be some variabilities in there that they're obviously not taking into account. But if there is
obviously a group like that, their value is to get an interview with Axios HBO.
Exactly.
That's their
right?
value. It's
That
not
is
that
their value.
Their value is that they know people at HBO and they can get on. They work for the DNC. It's not that they come up with. I mean, golly, CrowdStrike, right?
Yeah, man. They're narrative constructors, right?
I mean, that's their value. It's not that they're good at predicting. It's that they're good at programming.
Yeah.
That's what they're good at.
Absolutely,
if we were
man.
better at it, we would be rich. You know, we're only like kind of good at it.
Yeah, man, that's true. But I'm telling you, I don't like even dealing with the idea of Trump winning in an overwhelming landslide on the night of the election, then the American people having to sit around for a solid month just to figure out what the voting tally is going to be after this whole mail-in process, because that is just rife with nobody is going to accept the end of the result. Like nobody, not a single, most people in this country will not accept, at least the fringes that are going crazy right now, will not accept the outcome of this election if that is the scenario. If it is as extreme as they're talking about, if you shift from 390 electoral college votes on the day after the election, and then 35 days later, all of a sudden, Biden's walking away with 300 something. If it's that monumental of a shift, as their data actually showed, I mean, that's the graph that they put up there. If it's that monumental of a shift, dude, we're going to lose our minds, man. I think stuff's volatile right now. Like, nobody's going to trust the outcome of that election. Nobody.
And it's wishful thinking anyway. That's what I mean. It's predictive programming. I mean, they were showing so many, 200 electoral votes or whatever. What if they're just hoping it's that low? Well, and with what we've been seeing over the past couple weeks with the polls, it could be, he could have New York on election night. What are they going to do then? What are they going to do if he's got 49 states on election night?
I don't know, man.
And he's met like 80, 90, 95% of the traditional, like how many people normally vote in that state. What would a state's logic be for delaying if like most people who vote in normal, like the last election and the election before that, like the amount of people is the same or similar, just a little bit less. So knowing that absentee ballots wouldn't affect the election, what logic would there be? Except for here in the first 2 days of September, casting doubt and continuing to do so. That's the only way they'll be able to do it, is if they start now casting doubt, because I think they know now that on election night, if they don't start now, there won't be any doubt. People won't say, well, we need to wait for the absentee ballots unless they start predictive programming now. Because I think on election night, you'll have every indication that we've had a normal election. People actually went out and voted. They didn't, like Grant said, they're not going to fill out these paper ballots and mail them in and request them and know what to do with it and turn it in on time. Not in a number that affects the election. I just don't believe it. I don't believe in people that much. I mean, Grant, we can't get people to go vote in person.
I know, man. I know. You can't get people to go vote in person. And that's the thing, dude, is that like nobody is going to take the legitimacy of either way this comes down. That's the point I'm trying to make. Either way, the data actually leads us. No one's going to take the legitimacy of what this election is. So if there is a legitimate scenario by which under statute, these votes can be counted the night after the election, I need to look that up. I probably should have looked this stuff up before I actually came into this program this morning. But if there's some statute out there somewhere that in these states, you can actually mail a vote in and it's rise by time. And I guess the actual simple process of counting those mail-in votes or whatever scenario happens, if it's legally acceptable and there's a legitimate outcome that, say, turns a swing state, because this is all about electoral college votes. Popular vote, who cares? We live in a representative republic, right? If this turns the electoral college in such a manner that is legitimate, no one's going to take the legitimacy of that. Either way it comes down, that's ultimately my problem. And I do mean either way this comes down. Right. And I do also, let's say this scenario. Let's say Trump does win on election night and then the votes come in later on and Trump still wins. This type of pitch is still going to make it to the Democrats like, no, man, there's some foul games playing. And God forbid it goes the other direction, too. Right. I don't know, man. Trump voters aren't going to take it. Biden voters aren't going to take it. I'm telling you right now, I've never been more ready for an alternate option to this duopoly than I have in my entire life. And frustratingly enough, nobody's going to get that option this time around. I mean, not legitimately. I do think this was the Libertarian Party's one opportunity in a very long time to seriously capitalize, totally capitalize, man. And I know some of the stuff that's been going around is that they're not in the Libertarian Party. Joe Jorgensen is not going to be included in the debates, right? But I don't know, man. In the Libertarian sense, it's ABC, NBC, Fox News, and CNN's right to just interview 2 candidates if they want to. It's not right. But in a private market system, a private free market system, that's what they have the opportunity to do that. Just like I say, Facebook has the opportunity to shut down what they ever want to. ABC has the opportunity to give us only the 2 candidates we want to. And now the whole system perpetuates upon itself. And we're all part of the problem here too, man. We're all part of the problem here, but just focusing on only these 2. And we've focused on the extremes for such a long time, we forget to how to even have a nuanced conversation. I don't even know if anybody's talking about policy anymore. I don't. The only policy I'm really hearing pitched over the last couple of days is that both sides are blaming the other side for the violence that's going on. And
then that's not policy either.
No, it's not, dude.
That's like playing hot potato. That's like, I don't want to hold it, you hold it. And it's not both on the front. Small aside, because I want to stick on this topic, but small aside. Nobody's listening to Joe Biden, whose campaign helped bail out rioters.
Man.
Say that he's not for the violence or that he's actually against it. You don't get to say 4 months later. It started in May. It started in mid-May. It was like the 2nd or 3rd week in May. I can't remember exactly. But it's like, you don't get to 5 months later say, I'm against the violence and Donald Trump should say he's against the violence. That was right. Joe Biden's press release on Monday. And
on Monday,
he said, I'm against the violence and Donald Trump should say he's against it too. And it's like, dude, whatever. It's like Joe Biden coming out and saying George Bush should have done more for Katrina. Dude, it's like way late, dude. I know you're old and 5 months may seem like 5 minutes to you, but that's a long time. People have been burning stuff down for 5 freaking months. They were attacking police and federal buildings in Portland for 100 days before Joe Biden said it should stop. No, that's not a debate. That's Joe Biden doing damage control because he is down in every poll. They stopped doing polls on the last day of the RNC. Rasmussen said earlier this week that the number of polls has decreased by more than half since the last day of the RNC. You know why? Because they know. Because they know the Democratic Party, like we predicted in 2017, is imploding. It's over, man. It's the beginning of the end. We tried to help them stop the cascading cataclysm that is coming for their party. We tried. We wanted. We do not want the Democratic Party to go away. We don't. We want it to be like a healthy part of the debate of how we govern. But it's been unhealthy, and the body politic will reject this malignancy, this cancer. And they're doing it. And that's why all this stuff is going on, is they are trying to avoid their fate.
Part of what Shine's talking about here on the way out of the program, we're got to wrap it up. It's 10 o'clock here, Shine, and I got some stuff we got to do today.
Oh, man, I don't want to go yet.
We can keep going. But by the way, real news audience, y'all are the best in the nation. Seriously, greatest audience in the nation. We love y'all. Love this community we're building. What Shine's, a little bit of what Shine's talking about is the Washington Times headline here on the way out. There's a new poll. Let's see, Harris X poll indicating that President Trump's approval rating among black voters jumped by 60% during the RNC, the Republican National Convention. 60%, even as Democrats and progressives sought to brand Republican president as racist. Now, I'm not going to get out here and claim that there wasn't a very clear design behind the speakers that the RNC threw out there, obviously. But the interesting thing about how Trump administration approached this entire thing is that when you roll out a bunch of speakers that are advocating for criminal justice reform and a bunch of African-American speakers, you better be able to back it up with some sense of policy. And as unfortunate as it may be, that's what I'm saying, man, right? As unfortunate, that's the scenario. That's the scenario, man. If you really want to get down to it, that's the pitch that's being made. So not only are we going to roll out a bunch of African-American voters that the Democrats are going to claim would be token. That is exactly their words. I can show you the tweets. The Trump administration was able to back this up by releasing 3,000 plus people from federal crimes, by commuting sentences of I don't know how many other more, by the First Step Act that was passed, but the major monumental pieces of criminal justice reform that were changed at the federal level. I do this stuff for a living, man. If you don't believe me, go check it out for yourself, but I promise you it's there. The only reason why we were able to push some of the stuff that we did in Tennessee this year is because we were able to use Trump as coverage with Republicans in this state. I promise you that's how the conversations went. I had them with legislators in this state.
Sorry. I don't think we would have got that drug-free school zone thing reformed if not for the First Step Act, because it would have been seen as anti-police or something like that.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't, for years, we've been trying to get the most like no-brainer thing ever passed, which is civil asset forfeiture. The reason we haven't been able to get that passed is Republicans don't like those kind of bills.
Yeah,
in the South. They just don't like things that constrain police. We were able to constrain the police state in the state of Tennessee because Trump passed the First Act. And like the First Step, don't like discount how impactful that was. I mean, he got Van Jones to be one of the major people working on that. I mean, everything that went into the First Step Act also helped us in the state of Tennessee, and we would have gotten a lot more passed if it wasn't for COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
We would have gotten like 7 or 8 things done that are criminal justice, criminal justice reform stuff. I mean, like
that all had crazy support, had already passed committee votes in there. Like we were there, man. Yeah.
And it was specifically because of, it wasn't because the First Step Act passed. It's because of the work that was done to get it passed. There was a major lobbying effort, a major culture change, I would say, within the Republican Party. And that just doesn't ever just happen. That does not just happen. That's like a once in a generation thing that happened. And it's been squandered. And it won't happen again until my kids are my age. Bet. Especially with all of this rioting and anti-police sentiment, we're not going to have a lot of reforms with the police because people are going to be demanding authoritarianism. They're going to say, I don't care what freedom you take away, save me from this madness.
And let me be totally clear here with the audience, because I've been very consistent about this from day one. I like to claim that I call balls and strikes, right? And my major frustration with the Trump administration is that for every great thing like the First Step Act that fits within my political ideology, there's something that is totally outside of what I consider to be liberty-minded and conservative and so on and so forth. So for every major First Step Act, I have, I don't know, a suppressor ban, or a bump stock ban, or a red flag law, or something. So that's Second Amendment stuff. For every First Step Act, I have something going on with foreign policy or trade deals that I just don't like. It's just this weird tit and tat give and take thing. The lack of consistency is what's most important to me. That continuity really, for me, should point to what your overall political worldview is. And I just struggle sometimes to get a sense as to what this administration's actual political worldview might be, other than just, I don't know, but it doesn't necessarily matter. The point that matters for the story that I brought up was exactly just that Trump had a 60% improved rating with black voters, according to this Harris X poll. Here's the story. Trump's net approval rating from black voters from August 22nd to August 25th raised by 60%, which included the first 2 days of the RNC, rose by 24%, up from 15%. So it went from 15% up to 24%. 15% up to 24%. Now, if you want to know why that's significant, because the last time prior to Trump that a Republican won the vote, would Bush win with like 8% of the African-American vote? You know what I'm saying?
And Mitt Romney was the lowest. That's all I remember is Mitt Romney was the lowest. It was like 6% or something like that. And a huge part of the critique after it was over from people like Karl Rove of why he lost is that the Republican Party didn't do a good job reaching out to African Americans or Latinos in the 2012 election with Mitt Romney.
Hey, I wasn't able to hit some of these comments on the way up, but there's great ones in there. Go read them back. You guys are awesome. We love you. We love the likes and the shares and the comments and all this stuff. It really helps tweak that Zuckerberg algorithm, I promise you. But it's not about getting us more views. We don't monetize any of this, so Sean and I could care less about the views or any of that stuff. The only reason why we ask for the shares and the likes and all that stuff is to grow this community, to know you all personally, to get to know you all on a personal level more and more. For every person that's commenting in this Facebook, man, I have personal stories about. I have personal interactions with. Shine has personal interactions with. This is our family that we're building here. This is a literal, actual community. And for those that watch us outside of this state or anywhere else, outside of this country even, man, I would like to think that you all might know us on an intimate level now too, because vulnerability breeds vulnerability. If you're ever in Nashville, if you're ever in Knoxville, hit us up, stop by, man. We'll grab a beer, we'll get some hot chicken, we'll do the thing. Seriously. With that being said, Real news, real friends is what we do here. 10 in the morning, a little bit late getting out, but we love y'all sincerely. See y'all tomorrow.